Let's talk about Edinburgh, a city that's home to loyal pets and the world's most heart-throbbing wizard. But if you've ever visited this glorious place, you'll have come across one of the most well-known housing developments. No, not that one, but it's Newtown. However, it's far from new, and today we'll tell you the story of how it came to be the centre of pricey pints.
760. How much?
It's time to go back to the 18th century when the old town of Edinburgh was far from an area littered with tourist shops and annoying flyers.
Oh, piss off!
But was an area that represented the very worst of medieval squalor. Diseases, fires and drunkenness were the norm of the time, and as you can expect, wasn't the most desirable for the wealthy, who were moving to London in their droves, which would further exacerbate Edinburgh's issues. Something was needed to be done. Along came a man called George Drummond, who made it his mission to transform the city once and for all. Through Drummond's determination, he managed to help the town council secure 100 acres of land to the north of Loch. But what would be built there? To form a design for the site, the town council launched an architectural competition for a new town, which was to be located outside the existing medieval city walls. The council envisioned a bold and imaginative plan which would reflect the Scottish Enlightenment, which was all the rage at the time, and tempt wealthy residents to stay, or better yet, return from London. The competition was eventually won by a 26-year-old James Craig, who proposed a simple axial grid which followed the natural contours of the land. The plans consisted of a main thoroughfare which ran along the ridge with garden squares at either end, with two roads running parallel either side of the bottom of the ridge. Two minor streets would also run parallel to the main thoroughfare, with mews providing stable lanes for the big houses that would line the larger streets. Craig would name the main thoroughfare George Street after the king at the time, George III, with the two streets down the hill to be named Queen Street after his wife, and St Giles Street, the Saint of Edinburgh, to the south. The two minor streets were to be called Rose and Thistle Streets, the national emblems of England and Scotland, who had formed a union at the start of the century. The squares were to follow the same theme, taking the names of St George and St Andrew, the patron saints of England and Scotland. Now, if you've ever been to Edinburgh, you'll be aware that not all these plans for the names were implemented. The first was George Square, that was axed to avoid any confusion with the existing George Square, located within the old town, with it instead being called Charlotte Square, after George's wife, Charlotte. The second was St Giles' Street, which didn't go down well with the king, as St Giles is the patron saint of lepers, and the name of a slum area on the outskirts of the city of London, which all wouldn't go down too well with the posh people the area was looking to attract. The name would be changed to arguably the city's most well-known street, Prince's Street, named after his son, the Prince of Wales, George IV. The three perpendicular streets to complete the grid would take the names of Castle, Frederick and Hanover. Castle because of the view, Frederick who was the king's second son, and Hanover which George decided after a few too many drinks.
Boo!
The implementation of the proposals started in 1759 with the draining of the Loch. It was initially a difficult sell to get any takers to the new town, with the first residence popping up in 1767 called Thistle Court, built by a man called John Young, who refused to comply with the rigidity of the proposals, which is the oldest building in Newtown still in existence today. Proposals, which were also part of Craig's plans, were the construction of two churches on outer end of each square. Whilst the church was built along Charlotte Square, the other along St Andrews never materialised. The reason being, the land was owned by Sir Lawrence Dundas, who decided to build a Palladian mansion instead, completed in 1774, and is now occupied by something quite the opposite from a church.
Hello, I like money.
The first part of the new town was mainly completed by 1820 and had done a tremendous job of attracting the middle classes across from the old town, so much so that extensions of the new town were carried out in subsequent decades, but we'll leave that for another day.
You're joking. Not another one?